So here's the bottom end of the Meteorite, you'll see, I'll show you a Merlin after this, and you'll be able to see that not only is it very similar, but with 8 cylinders instead of 12, but it's basically exactly the same. They've just changed what they needed to change. The crankshaft's a flat plane, so that's exactly the same layout as the crankshaft that you'd see in a 4-cylinder engine. And this is a 60-degree V8 as well, so it works out, and I can show you sometime that it's got an uneven firing order because of that. One of the interesting things they changed on this is the crankcase itself. That's where one of the engine mountings is on the side there, and then the other one's up at that end there. They've actually got a brace running all the way along the side of the crankcase here. So they've like doubled up the thickness of the crankcase. I don't know why. That's the bottom of the oil pressure relief valve, and that feeds through into this oil gallery here. And the gallery then feeds into each of the main bearings and through into the crankshaft. The fork and blade connecting rod arrangement, again, which to be honest is better to see one of these things on the bench, is again, they are exactly the same connecting rods. The main bearing caps themselves are a bit more chunky than most Merlins, but actually on the 500 series, sort of much later on, possibly just after the end of World War II, they also strengthened up the caps on the Merlin. But this one's quite interesting because the number 5 cap, if you look at that there, is bigger than all the rest of them. And that's because this was the only engine out of all of these derivatives that was designed to hang a flywheel off the back end of the engine. So they put a wider main bearing on there, and that also is the one which has the thrust bearing. Whereas on most engines, the thrust bearing would be on number 3 in the middle there. And even on the Meteor V12 engine for tanks, they just had a conventional main bearing there because in fact the flywheel was supported along with the clutch at both ends of its assembly. So it sat in the engine, but it also was supported further back. There's my overdrive there, and then behind it is the adapter plate for the transmission and the flex plate. I'm lying on my back here, sorry. I don't have a turning stand for this engine at the moment, so it's up on the overhead hoist. But fantastic piece of engineering. So here's the Merlin, the original 12-cylinder engine which this Meteorite V8 was developed from. And you can see all the main bearing caps are the same except for number 4, which has the thrust bearing in it, but actually the journal on the crankshaft in that position is the same width as all the others, which is what I was referring to on the Meteorite, where the power takeoff end, which is this one here, is actually a wider bearing shell. You can see the oil gallery, the tube's just resting on top at the moment, it's not been fitted. Just as a point of interest, the power takeoff from the crankshaft, this is the Merlin again, has an internal spline in it there, and this here is the outer race of the rear roller bearing for the propeller reduction gear, and you can see where the propeller shaft will be running. This engine's upside down, of course, at the moment. And what I was referring to about the bracing along the crankcase on that V8 is that between the two engine mountings, it's actually got a brace running alongside the crankcase cast into it, whereas this doesn't. Don't know why.